Hi there, you Cert4 guys at Belmont. Thanks for joining in online or on this video in these little bit difficult circumstances. However, yeah, good to see you, and let's just see how long we have to do this. What I'm going to do is just go through the sort of things that we covered in class today so that you're not behind, and I'll send you this link for the video along with the handouts that we did today. But we just did a basic intro to each other. I just asked people to talk about what they knew about their name, first name, surname, or if they'd changed their name, or even if they wanted to share what their porn star name might be, which would be the first pet and the street they lived in. So yeah, we had a good little share, a lot of history, I guess, in terms of European backgrounds generally, a lot of English, Irish, Scottish, some certainly First Nations, Indigenous background here as well, and people, yeah, having a little bit of a diverse history. So have a think how you might have answered that, and that'd be great. Just if you're curious, my porn star name was Butch Yambo, being first pet and street I lived in, and yeah, probably not interested in that, but anyway, I've told you now. Then I did a little bit of my song. I think Bella will have seen this, but it just, you know, just a little bit about my history and my background. So I might, yeah, cut away to that song now. Well, I toddled off to work at a different school, but kids lived there and it seemed real cool. It was the 80s, 1980s. Well, the kids would scream and the kids would fight, but deep down I knew it'd be alright, 'cause I was human, H-M-A-N, human. Well, I had to think hard and I had to think fast to work with these kids who would kick my ass if I let them. L-E-T-T, let them. When I asked young Desert to take a bath, he got real stroppy with a gruff grown bark. He said, cock, forward, C-O-C-K, cock, forward. I said, young Desert, that I felt bad when you called me a cockhead. I felt real sad, and I prefer anti, A-N-T-Y, anti. You gotta try long and you gotta try hard just to put your ego in another yard, and that's equality, E-Q-T-Y, quality. So I sucked it up and I learnt good skills such as empathy and to take a chill pill if I needed any needed. So I had to learn about diversity, active listening and empathy. These alone could be the key to treating others with dignity. So you gotta learn skills and not to hate, to work with people and not humiliate. That's why I'm cock forward, C-O-C-K, cock forward, cock forward. And I apologise if this traumatises you, but I guess that's, for me, it's autobiographical, and that's my starting point into my career in community services. I started working in a residential care facility or setting for young people with nowhere else to go, really. And I guess today it'd be places like a Lambie or Premier that looking after those kids in out-of-home care would be the sort of comparison to that environment. But what I did pick up there, it was certainly important to have some good communication skills, active listening, empathy, and yeah, just being able to ensure that young people who perhaps didn't feel heard, felt heard, and that was a good starting point. Then we started with a little exercise into what makes up community services. I suppose that is important. I guess we're studying a community services course, and some of you will have had perhaps some experience, or I know Bella does and has already done the Cert 3 as well as her own advocacy work and social media work and other experiences in the community. Just to set the picture, we did a little mind map, and I'm just showing that now on the screen. Sorry about my messy writing, but if you look at the community services sector in the middle and you just work your way around, you've got things like the justice system, and that could be juvenile justice or the adult system. Corrective services is a name put forward. Near that to the right, look, you've got legal sort of support, legal services, legal aid, I guess, or places like Vocal, not specifically mentioned there, but Victims of Crime Assistance League works certainly with those people escaping domestic violence, and that area in particular, certainly women, and I guess that above that, court support. But having said that, court support could include working with young people or anyone really who needs some sort of support in that legal situation, and if that's your role. We looked at homelessness. We mentioned refuges and whether that could be women, children escaping domestic family violence, or young people, okay, or men also need shelter as well. Similar to the homelessness, I guess, running alongside there, you've got your Salvation Army, your Vinnies doing emergency relief, whether that's food, maybe helping with bills, that sort of thing. We've got mentioned food banks and trucks, I guess they're mentioned. You'll see some of those around from place to place. Orange Sky Laundry's not mentioned, but again, that are helping people living homeless or sleeping rough, a place to do their laundry. So Orange Sky. Places like Oz Harvest too help with that food, rescuing good food in a sense that otherwise would be thrown away, and getting that out to a lot of those sort of refugees or people in need. We've got Centrelink mentioned as a part of the community services sector, although it can be quite bureaucratic and difficult to deal with at times, but they're about that financial support ultimately. We're moving down, we've got counselling and support there. Just over to the right from there, we've got First Nations as an area that in community services specific, so working with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people services that specialise in that area, as in the LGBTQIA plus as a service focus area. And again, there's an interconnection between a lot of these. I didn't start at mental health, I don't think, but yeah, certainly any of those areas, there's a connection back to mental health, whether you're in the justice system, homelessness, emergency relief, Centrelink, needing financial support. Again, that's a big strain or stress or compounding mental health, whether it creates it or makes it worse. That's the question. AOD is mentioned there, alcohol and other drugs. Got to get used to the acronyms, or that one in particular. We've got rehab and support groups there under the AOD branch of. Did I mention multicultural services and interpreting services? If I didn't, I just did. Sort of got a bit out of whack there, but aged care is another branch of work, and we had a little quick discussion about whether, is it called nursing home or residential care. I think we settled on residential care, but you could be a support worker in that space, perhaps providing respite and perhaps other services or specialists like occupational therapists you could be working alongside, or it could even be in-home support. There, I've managed to read my writing somehow. If you were struggling, I was, and managed to do it. Disability arm on the far left, which includes NDIS as a big funder, I guess now. Physical mobility disability, it could be a vision disability, hearing disability, intellectual learning, autism. So as we mentioned in class, disability sector is quite broad, big and wide-ranging, where you could be working. Now, I had a little handout that I had a look at after. That's what we came up with as a group. There's a few things that we probably could add into that. That little mind map there. Youth work wasn't mentioned specifically, or children's services. I think in family service was sort of mentioned, but not specifically family support services, which, they would touch into a lot of that work there, whether it be mental health or counselling, family counselling or emergency support or relief. But family support services for sure. Housing, we've mentioned homelessness, but certainly working in that Department of Housing or community housing could be a place that you are familiar with or would like to work, as in employment services is mentioned in the handout, and I didn't specifically mention employment services, but to me they would sit in the disability services, supporting people with a disability get a job, maintain a job, or perhaps in maybe even a youth space, but yeah, just about any of those spaces, I suppose, to be in that job network, I think you might call it these days. I think it's still called the job network, maybe the last 20 years. A job network that people, out there, whether it's Employment Plus, etc., and helping people find jobs, get their jobs, maybe help them with their resume. Again, that could be an area you're interested in. And child protection wasn't mentioned specifically. I guess it comes sort of under children's services, but it's different again, isn't it? It's about the care and protection of vulnerable children at risk. And I guess obviously goes hand in hand with some of that homelessness stuff, or living in refuges or in alternate care. So that's where we started, and that's just to get our heads into the space. Then we had a little chat, a little bit about, I think first we sort of suggested, how do people feel when they first maybe come in contact with a service? And that could be ranging from things like happy and joy and relief to being ashamed, scared, frustrated, annoyed. I guess what I'm saying, there's a whole range of emotions that a person is likely or could feel, and being part of being a good listener, as connecting with people, and the subject's called use communication to build relationships. So I guess that starting point is active listening. So we just had a quick chat, and again looked at the board. And, just from the top of our heads, what are the things we do to show that we're listening non-verbally? So things like good eye contact, and we did mention that, being mindful of cultural differences there is important. So not all cultures like direct eye contact, and we don't want to be staring people down either, but at least, some respectful and culturally appropriate eye contact. We spoke about body language and that little acronym, SOLER, solar. I mean, the S was sort of like that square on, but you're slightly offset, and we demonstrated that. So you're not directly butting up, directly to someone. And of course, we were social distancing when we did this, but a little bit to the side-ish, but we're still with an open posture. That's not having your arms and your legs crossed and looking like you don't want to be there. The L for lean, occasionally leaning forward, which I guess showing that you're attentive rather than leaning back, I suppose, hands beyond the head, that sort of thing. Would be, I guess, a body language expert might have a comment on that, saying something about, it's a dominant or superiority, sort of, you're conveying that sort of image if you're leaning back with the hands behind the head. But it's more about leaning forward. Eye contact we've mentioned, appropriate eye contact. Then the R was relaxed, so that SOLER, something you might hear about. The nodding was mentioned as well. And I guess that non-verbal is also, or being attentive, just checking in, what you're picking up on the person that you're talking with from their body language will give you a sense of how they're feeling as well. Some of the verbal stuff, we had a quick, things that you do to help listen when you're verbally listening. We spoke about the minimal encourages. That's down in the middle of that list, but that's just that yes, going yes or not, often it goes with your nodding. Sort of thing. We spoke about good questioning, like you open and closed, and to me, we spent a little bit of time looking at the value of open questions. So the idea of a good open question helps people explain or talk a little bit more about themselves. So we're not talking about ourselves. We're really interested in, although, we might hear things that we'd like to challenge. We don't say you shouldn't do that necessarily. And I've got on the blockers or the side of the things that get in the way of good communication is the word should. So rather than should, we spoke about the use of questions like, have you thought about what would happen if you did X, Y, and Z? What would happen if you tried to do this? So we're not saying you should do this. We're asking people to think about what might happen if they tried to do X, Y, and Z. What would happen if you tried to contact a refuge, rather than saying you should go and you should just go and pack up and live in a refuge. Perhaps we're talking to someone dealing with violence at home. You should just leave. What would make it? Or what would happen if you tried to make contact with a refuge? So we can hear that story a little bit more. What do you think would happen if you rang a refuge? How would you go about contacting a refuge? Have you thought about how you might be able to contact a refuge? Things like that, rather than saying you should do this or you do that. So it really gives people a chance to talk. All right, so what are the other things in the verbal stuff? Paraphrasing, that's about getting a big chunk of information and putting it back in your own words. So it's not repeating back in what exactly the person said, but it's condensing it. So I've already given it quite a little bit of info. To paraphrase it, I've all right, so you're giving a little bit of info about what you covered today, and you looked at the community service sector as a whole, and now you're talking about good communication and active listening skills. So there's a little paraphrase of where we've been so far. Summary is a little skill that you might use when you're getting towards the end of a conversation or a meeting with someone, where you just sort of wrap it up and say, well, we've spoken about this and that, and what we're going to do next, or what's going to happen next is this and that, and if it's okay, I might do this, and we'll see about meeting next week on a Friday or something like that. So the summary pulls it together. Time and space, so not looking or seeing that you're rushed, giving the appropriate space. Space there in that context that we've mentioned on the board is about giving people time and opportunity to have their say. You don't need to feel like you've got to fill in every gap with any gap in the conversation with you chattering and talking. A little bit of space is fine, and some silence is fine, and that might be someone just gathering their thoughts and ready to talk. So if you don't give that space, then that, you might be cutting them off. And empathy is an important skill from my perspective, to show that you're really listening to someone. And empathy is about identifying the feeling from the body language that people are showing and the words that they're saying. You can sort of tap in and show that I'm really listening by saying, I can see that you're really frustrated by the situation, or I can see that you're angry, or I can see that you're concerned. So identifying the appropriate language, the appropriate emotion, and naming it, that's empathy, and it really shows that people are listening. And we had a list of empathy words already on the wall here that we just referred to. It's good to have a bank of words in your vocabulary, or good to look at words from time to time and say, I might be able to use that one in the right circumstance. It's good to just broaden your grasp on all the different emotions. There's a lot of them out there, and if you're not 100% sure what someone's feeling, you could always say seems. It seems like you're pretty frustrated, and they may say, not frustrated, I'm more just pissed off, and I consider pissed off as an emotion. Blockers. So blockers are things that might get in the way of a good conversation and good listening. So if you're just talking about yourself, I remember a time I was homeless, blah, ramble. And it's not about you. If you sort of start talking all about your story, it's really about listening to someone else's story, to be honest. Someone mentioned in the group you're being aware of your own bias, and I've got to say, and Bella, obviously, we spent a bit of time on this last course, but we all have our biases as in part of the world that we grow up in. If we just be aware of those, and so we can manage those and take steps to address them if need be. But for me, growing up as a male in the era that I grew up, there was certainly some male privilege and expectations, certain roles are males and certain roles are females, that sort of thing. So ingrained in that, there is certainly some bias around gender that I've got to be mindful of and try and manage. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and perhaps none of us ever will be, but we certainly got to keep trying. Cultural differences and religion, being mindful of that. Religion was mentioned about not pushing a particular religious barrow is important when you're trying to listen and connect to people. If they've got a religion they want to talk about, that's good, but it's not about us pushing our religion onto people. Time as a blocker, looking rushed, or saying, is this going to take long, looking at the watch, things like that. And I've mentioned the word should down there. So they're the blockers. And what we did next, a little activity, just so have a think about this at home, but right on the board, head, hand, heart. So head is the stuff that you might know about. So think about what you know about. Hand is stuff that you might like to do, stuff that have a particular hobby, or you like to get out and garden, or build something or other, gingerbread houses, whatever, no right or wrong with any of this, but there might be some things that you like to do, and your heart, stuff that you're passionate about. And I think some of the examples in the group included being passionate about sport, and some particular sports and things like that, and that's all good, and you might know about that, and that's what you like to do, and you're passionate about it, but could be other things as well. So while we did that, thought about that, then we interviewed each other, and we tried to use those good interpersonal skills, those good active listening skills, so that people could get to know someone, get to know their name, and then just introduce each other back to the group. And they didn't take notes during that conversation, just concentrated on being a good listener and getting people, using open questions and getting people to talk about themselves. And then swapping over with that, and then just coming back, introducing and say, getting to know each other. Maybe we can have a go at this when we meet online, and that would give you a little opportunity to do that. Yeah, we'll work out how we do that online. There's a little challenge. First assessment, knowledge assessment, and there was a bunch of terms. How was that? It was called matching terms exercise. This is question 1. So I gave a word bank of terms like newsletter, social media and intranet. And then there was a bunch of definitions on how you would use these terms. So you had to match the word bank to the definition or how you would use it. So what we did as a class, we brainstormed. So here's what we came up with, more or less. So if we look at this newsletter, so what we said about a newsletter, it was a newsletter we sort of come up with. It was a production that spreads word or information about a service or group in the community. Can be printed and left in the community to promote feature and services or people. So almost old-fashioned in some ways. It could be printed out, but I guess they still be online. But it's a production and it's spreading info and spreading about information about the service or about the people that are using the service, for example. Social media, so platforms such as Instagram and Facebook, and that could be about advertising forthcoming events, or it could be about promoting things that have happened or saying this happened and this was really good. The intranet, so we're saying it's an internet platform for a specific service and usually some sort of secure log on, got some sort of portal entry point and provides information to staff, and it could be clients, but to staff I said things like policies, procedures, maybe where you get forms, maybe for service, for clients they could go in there and also get information. But it is a service specific portal, I guess you'd call it, and it's usually safe with some sort of log on. And I guess TAFE, you could argue, has that sort of intranet. It certainly does for staff. I'm not sure about it from the student's perspective. Videos, so I certainly use videos. You're watching one now, but for me it's about education and training, and that's something that we came up with, but it could be about raising the profile of a service. Tablets and applications, we thought they'd be used in the field, maybe to write case notes when you're remote or working away from the office and doing home visits. But maybe we could be helped with pictures or things like that to help people with that, maybe some communication challenges, and perhaps used to book appointments online in the application part of that for people, for clients could book an appointment. Email, you can use that to communicate directly with people, we said, and there's a calendar system, and that can be used to set up an appointment, perhaps a podcast. So that we thought that could be very educational, and I certainly gave an experience of using some of the mental health platform podcasts, Beyond Blue, for example, with young people, and there's other young people on the podcast telling their story, which have been quite enlightening or informative or engaging. And so it could be like you've got a guest expert on the field, and that can help create understanding, I think, and awareness raising. It's a podcast, a web, specific to a service, we thought. A website, and it provides information about the service, what it does, and it could be the first point where people get information about a service and what the service does, programs, policies, that sort of stuff. The website may be a good first point of information or entry even. Broadcast, so that idea of getting news out, broadly speaking, should be like radio or television primarily, I'm thinking still, perhaps newspapers, but a feature. We're saying a reputable source, maybe like ABC or TV, and you get going out to a wide audience, and it's about getting wider understanding. So from that, people had a go at matching the word bank to the terms, and that's as far as we got today with that. Hopefully that is all okay. But I'll catch up with you, and hopefully I'll catch up with you 11:30 tomorrow, Wednesday, and hopefully I've got this video out to you before then. That would be ideal. Toodle pips.